Don't you just love it when you forget something? When something that's quite important to the action that you're taking on just falls through the cracks? That would be why this drawing is starting at this point and not at the absolute beginning, because although I had everything prepped, I forgot to turn on the record. And yet here we are because we have to move on, because that's life. Fear is an absolutely integral part of what it is to be an artist. Perhaps what it is to be human in general, but that seems a broader topic and one that I'm less equipped to have. But fear is a pretty normal part of the art process. In this sense, I was fearful, and my fear was well founded, that I would forget something. I did. And though I had that moment of failure, where I was wondering if it was worth continuing on this drawing, even within that, I had the desire to just be done because I was frustrated. But that wouldn't be productive. That would not be efficient. That would not be a good lesson and habit for me to build into myself, and so I kept going. The only deficit is we don't have the first few minutes of this video, but what does that really matter in the grand scheme of things? After all, the weird dragon lion thing is gonna turn out all the same. Well, how are you today? I hope that you are drawing something alongside me as I work on this and as I ramble. As always, this is sped up just a little bit. It's at 2x speed because it seems to work a little bit better for these videos. If you're looking for some real-time drawings and studies as I work on things, let me know in the comments below. I'm putting some together, and I just would be curious to know what kind of things you'd like to watch, whether it be videos like this, where it's a stylized drawing of some kind, or a lot of the work I've been doing recently has been studying for things like Smogist. But I would just like to hear from you all below, because that gives me an idea of which way you would want these videos to go, and I can tailor things that direction. But today I want to talk about fear and how it's a natural piece of the artistic pie. Not my brain immediately, I'm like, well, what flavor would the pie of fear, the piece of fear pie? I feel like blackberry maybe. I don't know. Blackberry is a pretty yummy flavor. But this is a weird thing because there is a couple sides to this. There is the, don't give in to fear. Like, it's easy when you open a new page or you start a new piece or you try a new medium to be fearful, a little scared that things aren't going to go quite the way that you want. And that's kind of relevant and probably true. Every time I dive into a new medium, it goes poorly, except for the random 10% of the time that I seem to have a skill or I'm just lucky and things work out all right. But most of the time I start a new thing, it's hard and I don't do as well as I expect. And so naturally, you can have a little bit of fear about trying something new, fear of that new thing failing. And I think a lot of artistic fear comes down to the fear of failure. And that fear is not unwarranted. As a species, we are primed to do the things that are safe because a lot of our instincts, a lot of our anxiety comes from a place of keeping us safe. So we're not eaten by some random predator, or so we don't run out of food or make really poor decisions, poor social decisions that ostracize us from the group, because the community for most of human history has been absolutely essential, not just to mental health, but to actual physical health and safety. So we have these instincts, and sometimes as artists we have to fight against them because it can be really easy to have this fear of failure tied into something artistic when there really isn't a big downside if things go awry. If this drawing turns out poorly, at worst, I've wasted a page and I've wasted, an hour of my time. But that's really not that big a deal. It's not like picking a mushroom in the forest and going, well, what's the worst that could happen? Well, the worst that could happen is that you die. And there's a lot of stages before that would also be rather unsavory. When it comes to drawing, when it comes to making a piece of art, the risks are generally pretty low. And yet, psychologically, we don't seem to distinguish much. Our bodies and our brains almost seem to chew on them the same, that this is life or death, that this is survival at stake. And that's sometimes how it feels. I'm sure that you've had that before, right? When you've been on some creative endeavor and it starts going south, and you have similar levels of panic to what you would have in an awkward social situation or something where safety was actually a concern. That's odd, isn't it? It's kind of strange, and yet it makes sense from like a biological, psychological level. I think that at a base level, understanding that piece of ourselves, that piece of humanity, can help you to work on it, though, can help you to avoid it. But there's also like healthy fear when it comes to art. Sometimes you're trying to input some level of fear. There's things that you fear that you're trying to get into your artwork. There's things that are fearful to you because you're stressed about the possibility of failure or you don't know how to handle it, and working through that can be really beneficial to you. In a lot of ways, art is almost just a microcosm of the rest of life. It is the engaging with ideas, concepts, skills, realizing that there's a difference between skill and talent, that both exist, that you might have one, you might not have the other, that one is able to be developed and the other probably not. The thing about art is that whether you make a dime from it ever, whether you get good at it ever, it's still productive for you as a human being because it gives you a chance to think about what it is to be human, to work through your fears, to understand those fears. It's a weird thing. I really do think that if everyone learned how to draw at a basic level, that most people would benefit from it, that there'd be a higher degree of happiness. When I taught middle school primarily, I had students all the time who would take my class, whether they were forced to or whether they decided to. They would take my class and they had no hope at the beginning. This sounds awful, and I'm talking early on, like the first day of school or the first 2 weeks of school, because it certainly wasn't something I was instilling in them, but they would be fearful, especially as they watched other people who were more skilled than they were. And they'd go, well, I can't do that. I'm not going to be able to draw these things. I'm not going to be able to mix the colors right. I'm not going to be able to paint. And they would just have this innate fear and trepidation about things. And especially in the later years of my teaching career, when I'd spent enough time working with enough different kinds of humans that my toolbox was pretty robust, every student who tried, every student who put in effort, who listened, who didn't give up immediately, improved. Not all of them got really, really, really good at drawing or painting, but every single one of them got better. And you know what? They all felt better about themselves in general. Even the ones who were very much, math and science, engineering type of kids, who were probably never going to do anything artistic after the class, they had more confidence. They had a better understanding of their ability to take on something new, to struggle with something and succeed. And I think really the fear of failure is understandable. The fear of the struggle is something we have to work through. They're linked, obviously, because you struggle with something generally before you fail, and our brains are primed not to waste time. And so if you're struggling with something and yet a lot of other things in life come very easily for you, it can be easy to push against that struggle, to go, no, I'm just going to go back and do the thing that I know, the thing that is easier for me. But that's one of the best things about art, is that it is a useful struggle. And the kids who spent a lot of time before they got to my classes struggling with art, learning how to be better at it. Not the kids who were just born with a lot of talent, but the kids who worked really hard to learn how to draw horses or dragons or lions or people. They did better academically across the board. They did better in sports. They did better in general life because they understood how to struggle. There is so much struggle in life. And if you haven't encountered it yet, get ready, because it will come at some point. It's kind of like, somebody who doesn't have any kind of weird medical stuff by their mid-20s. It's like, oh, it's coming. Just wait. The struggle is always going to be there. It's part of being human. And art is one of the best ways to work through the fear of that struggle, to learn how to do it in a tolerable way, to understand how you struggle, the things that you struggle with. Art allows you to engage with that fear and to learn how to manage it. You can't always tame it, but you can learn how to manage it. You can learn how to understand it, and you can learn how you react to it. Fear is a weird all too human thing. Don't give in to the fear of failure, but sometimes embrace the little bits of fear that tell you what's coming down the pipeline so you can at least be prepared for it. But fear is going to come your way as you work on your art. Understand that it is not always something to be heeded, and try to understand that it's just simply going to come like summer or winter. There is no avoiding it. But it's not all bad. Sometimes your fear can point you in a good direction, and sometimes it can be helpful. And sometimes, no, actually a lot of the time, when you work through that fear, when you struggle on and you succeed, or even just you finish the thing you were scared of, you'll have this rush of excitement because you have triumphed. Well, as always, thanks for listening. I hope that this little talk about art and fear was beneficial to you. If you're looking to join an artistic community, you can check out the Discord community in the link below. Thank you to Patron Who, What, Where, When for your continued support, and all my other Patreon supporters as well. If you want to check out the Patreon, there's a link down below to that as well. Have a good one, y'all. See you soon.